Good. So we have had sort of like good questions posted in the Q&A and also before, but maybe sort of like to warm up. I have a question for you that you might all like answer. So my question is that if you think of like communication with professional clients and like with the wider society, so is it more important to know or tell what you can do with current AI or what you cannot do with current AI? Would Petteri, could you start maybe?
Okay, tricky question. I guess what I tried to say in my presentation is that in at least in our sector, we are very cautious in jumping into that we can solve this and that with AI. That I think there's a tendency that not to even use it because there's this type of challenges that how can we prove that the trust is there. So in that sense we at least it's not at the moment in our interest to really brag what all kind of things we can do with AI. But then there might be other applications like the mimers was an example of that completely new type of insights are digged from the same data that has been available there. So it's a kind of both ways. But I would say that we are cautious in jumping into this type of big statements, what benefits we can get it from. We want to learn step by step, and we are in that path at the moment.
Sounds sensible. How about Nico? You probably communicate with
it's
a lot of clients.
Funny. Well, not sure if you could call it a trick question, but I think it's sort of course, it's sort of how do you manage the expectations of the society, and also how do you manage the overall conversation of how do you control this sort of technology. In the end, of course, like the technology is moving really, really fast forward, and I wouldn't even say that I have even the faintest clue of everything that's ongoing at the moment in the AI field. So in that sense, it probably makes rather sense to just focus on, okay, what is actually getting accomplished at this point with AI for a few reasons. First is naturally that answers change. If we are unable to do something today, it might actually be rather different a month from now. And naturally, this sort of the minds of people change far more slowly. The second bit is that in the end, there's a huge potential of, okay, what can we actually do with AI that far better than what was done previously. But what is needed for us to sort of get the value out of that potential is to have a magnitude more of people who are wanting to take that AI and put that into real world applications. And so we're focusing on what we can do with AI is a way to sort of build this enthusiasm and ambition that, okay, I'm actually going to change something around me with this newfound technology. And that's, I think, the most important thing that we can actually enable.
How about Markus?
I was answering the QA question. Can you repeat the question?
The question was that this is like more important to tell people what you can do with AI or what you cannot do with AI.
Yeah. I think it's good that we are sort of realistic. I mean, we oversell this domain so bad. So I think a bit of pessimism is actually good.
Great. Okay. I have like my next sort of like a warm-up question on the list is related to actually what Nico said in his presentation. So you brought up this thing with sort of like generalists versus specialists, and of course like the promise of AI as for Petteri brought up was that sort of like you don't need to tailor things maybe that carefully to your specific thing, but you can sort of train with data and so on. But then are we going into more general direction, that there will be like more general AI methods, if not like artificial general intelligence, but more general machine learning tools? Or is it going more in the that you need to very carefully hand tailor your things for each task and different field? What is your feeling about this? Maybe Nico can comment because you took this up in your presentation.
Yeah, I think it's a good analogy to look at previous technologies that humans have invented. That nowadays there's no single electric technology. It's a very different thing if you're designing how does electricity go through a computer processor unit, or how does electricity work in high voltage transmission lines, or how do you just install a lamp in your home? They have nothing in common in terms of expertise. The same you could say for software expertise, that it has diverged into huge bits of tiny little pieces. We have really deep expertise needed simply because we've already gone so far with that technology. And I really think that's going to be the case with AI as well.
How about Markus?
Well, I would maybe reverse the question, so that if we would have some kind of miraculous model building that can just give us a great model, would we actually dare to deploy that in real world? Anyways, like we probably would need to make sure that it's safe and has nice properties and then can be deployed. So then we would have to kind of put more resources on that side.
Yeah, I think there's maybe I could maybe just give an additional thought on what Markus mentioned. Sometimes when you're thinking like what sort of different use cases you can cover with the technology, you're seeing these individual use cases as islands in an archipelago. And then it's like sort of like what is the size of the circle you need to draw? It's sort of the challenge. How much work do you need to do to have a generic technology that covers all of these use cases? And then it's about like, do you draw multiple small circles or one huge one? And then you just need to see like how much empty space is there in the middle that you have to cover if you're working with generic approaches.
Also, I would like to continue that the field is also moving all the time. So certain problems become solved, and then we kind of move on, and then we kind of forget that they were also a result of maybe like decades of development. For example, like we have Siri and Google Assistant in our phones, and those are all based on machine learning. But now they're so routine that we kind of forget that, hey, they were amazing results in the days.
Continuing what Nico was saying, so for companies like ours, it's a big issue actually, that if it ends up being hundreds of small islands, that we don't have that background. So where do we get all these people that solve these hundreds of problems in the new technology area, basically? So the hope is that there would be some kind of bigger problems that can solve majority of the challenges, or maybe it goes into that mode that there are then specific partners that solve these things to other companies. I don't know how it goes, but it's clearly a competence challenge.
Yeah. Then maybe like there was some questions after Petteri's presentation regarding like trust and ethics, which are of course like very topical areas in AI, on the less technical research side. There's of course like a lot of research and discussion about these aspects in society, but maybe sort of like, could you comment on your own parts then on can we trust these things, and like on the ethical aspects? So do you have processes for like the ethical aspects in your companies, for example?
Was it for me or?
maybe Petter, you can start. Maybe, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So defense sector is probably specific in this sense, so that wrong decision can be very costly. Actually, in most of the sectors, probably that's true. So lot of effort to consider trust and so on, and then ethics comes into that picture as well. On the other hand, then one could say that I think somebody was asking in the chat that can you save lives? That if the technology can predict something faster than anything else, probably that can save lives. So there's a lot of different perspectives to that thinking, and yeah, in our company, that's of course high effort on looking at the ethical aspects of this technology, other technologies, and also the business aspects.
Nico?
Yeah, I think I already placed a bit of thoughts over there about the ethics. I'm sort of like a broken record, so reflecting AI to other technologies here, and so anything is a tool, whether it's a knife or cars or AI. It can always be used for different purposes. And it's more about the question of the people who are taking that technology into use. But I think there's a lot of evidence already on how AI is directly improving, for example, care in the medical sense, or in hospitals as well, that we've been working on actually. So there's a huge collection of evidence that this is a technology that can really take one step further in what is the quality of life, and how can we protect life on this planet. But as any technology, you need to be mindful of how it's applied, and with great power, there's always great responsibility. And I think that's only something that we're sort of right now learning with these various regulatory approaches to AI.
Before I give the floor to Markus, I might add a comment that for example, there's a lot of talk about self-driving cars and so on, and that of course has AI as sort of core component in this. If the car is driving, there must be some AI aspects, but then there's trust issues and safety issues here. So and then Markus talked in his presentation about these uncertainty quantification things and aspects. So what are the role of these methods then in for example the safety and ethical decision making of the AI? Markus, can you comment on that?
Yeah. So I guess there's a host of problems where sort of whether the AI is ethical or not depends on whether it works or not. So if it drives your Tesla just fine, then it's okay. But if it does something bad, then it's not fine. Same in medical diagnostics, we would like to use AI tools to help doctors, but then there is always the risks. And to me, the key problem there is then the explainability. We need to be able to make models that can basically tell the user why did they make some decision, or why are they proposing a certain decision, and make it understandable. And then, yeah, that would then definitely help.
And then the next question is, are we there yet? I guess no. I guess there's still work to do in that part. Grabbing some of the questions that were posted earlier. So there were for example questions regarding can deep learning help preserve for example languages digitally, or maybe the larger picture is that can deep learning help us in as sort of as humans to do things in society for the Finnish language, which is a small language. So do you see some like possibilities of like deep learning for like the Finnish society in that regards, for example, language wise? Nico, do you have anything to
yeah, I was hoping for the research corner of the panel to go first. Yeah, so I think it's, yeah, of course there's the sociological aspects that I rather not go into, not really my field of expertise there, but in terms of technology, well, Finnish language is in a way it's a stable language with a stable country where it will probably thrive going forward as well. But then there's been quite a bit more effort into how do you actually preserve languages that are not in a similar situation, languages that are actually really disappearing from the world, and building a real understanding of how they work, and also at the same time preserving all the stored information, stories, tales, knowledge that has been built on top of that language. So I think it's been an active field over there, at least.
Yeah, I would like to add that in University of Helsinki, there's a research group working on a sort of linguistic AI, where they have reconstructed the family trees of Finnish language to Karelian and Komi and all of these like related, and then they can reconstruct like how the language was 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. And of course, this is very interesting, and this is also really cool that it's been done here for the Finnish family language family.
Indeed. There's a question that was just posted in the Q&A functionality. Like, is it too early or too late to influence the perceptions about what AI is and can do? Which industry application could play an important role in your opinion? Is the question here.
Yeah, I can maybe give one example first while letting others to think. So I think the healthcare is actually going to be a rather significant field in general, and I'm not saying that it's probably even the largest. There's a lot of really huge fields in industrials and vehicle space and factories and so on. But I think when it comes to sort of like a step gap of how much we can actually improve the status quo, then healthcare is probably pretty close to the top of the list for myself. So there's a lot of things, whether it's medical imaging or pharma research, genomics, where AI is doing like really amazing tricks that is far and beyond what was possible previously, and it's actually just happened during the past few years. So considering that a few years ago there was a lot of talk about how AI will replace all the different work in medical imaging, getting rid of those people there. Well, it's of course it's not that black and white, but nowadays medical imaging is actually not the biggest field using AI within healthcare. It's actually more about genomics, and simply about considering that genomics is still up and coming, and it has only started working with AI just during the past few years, and it's already really massive. That sort of gives the indication of how much can actually be achieved there.
Good. Then there's a question like posted earlier about like creative possibilities of AI. So the person asking the question is interested in capabilities of AI-driven virtual entities to alleviate isolation and loneliness and offer some form of companionship. Are the panelists working in any projects related to these issues? And then especially like the person who's asking would be interested in like, are there like existing tools, for example, for like creating virtual entities of this form in Finnish? I think there probably is in English or Japanese, I would guess. But then is this a thing in Finland? Anyone has any insights on this side? Of course, this goes quite far into like really artificial entities that you can sort of like hang out with.
Well, maybe I can just comment that in this all kind of real type simulation environments and training environments are in the same. I understand this question that we are talking about similar things, that you can practice very demanding tasks in an environment that feels in many sense it feels real, and by that means then get training that you cannot get otherwise. And so the same technologies probably could be used for many type of things, for in social kind of inclusivity and entertainment and things like that. So I believe a lot of is happening. It might have a little bit different flavor though.
Good. Then there is a kind of like an important question for the society here. Like, can we make Finland the leading country within AI, so that AI becomes a significant product of export? I think this is a good question.
Yeah, I think for me, you could sort of maybe reflect this to what has overall happened in the Finnish startup ecosystem during the past decade, which has been sort of like a really amazing transformation of the economy, and also like people like how people perceive new and small companies, and like succeeding in building new value out of new technology. It's a certain bit of this sort of like ambition and attitude that you're just going to see what happens, and that's what this startup ecosystem has achieved. And then the other side is naturally the expertise that is I think pretty well actually taken care of by existing universities. Maybe the thing where we could still be better is in combining these two, and just to be nice to the host. So I think it's been really awesome to see my own alumni university Aalto to sort of really tackle this approach. Okay, how do we bring these different types of people together from design and business and technology, because that's really needed. So there's a long chasm between tech and actually the final use cases that people have, and you need to have people who can and want to sort of have one leg in both of those worlds, and designing products that are good fit in both sides.
Yeah, I have also been in several times taking part of discussions where a little bit same thing has been the focus, that and it has been relatively easy to at least claim that Finland is a good place for AI with all the historical research steps, and then FCAI being a clear evidence that we try to step up in the research domain, and actually this startup and gaming industries are good visible examples as well. But then we do have some shortcomings compared to, for example, Sweden, where there is the private funding available. Wallenberg Foundation is putting huge amount of money to especially in AI research, and we are lacking that. We are not able to match that.
Yeah, so from scientific perspective, AI development is really focused around these sort of superstar, sort of genius persons. Like there's a handful of people that like any machine learning person would say, like who are like the persons who are leading AI right now globally. And Finland actually has a lot of these superstars. I mean, there are professors or AI researchers in Finland who are top of the world in their domain. And I think this should be recognized or acknowledged more. And also this then also connects with the money issues of just throwing more money might not be useful unless we get the correct persons here, the correct research groups, or attract also that very top of the top talent as well.
Good. There is actually a quite like related question, maybe to like make impact here. It says that according to a recent MIT survey, more than half of all companies are piloting or deploying AI or have an AI strategy and understand how AI can generate business value. But only 10% of companies obtain significant financial benefits with artificial intelligence technologies. What do you think are the key reasons for this situation?
So yeah, I guess Petteri could also have pretty tangible ideas on how it's actually happened within Saab. But for me, at least, the first thing that comes to mind is something that I mentioned in the presentation, saying that AI as a technology is touching a lot of different bits and pieces of a company. So it's not just about ripping out a lot of existing technology and expertise in some cases, but it is totally overhauling probably even business models and definitely many operational models where there have been processes, training programs, people's livelihoods that have been built across multiple decades. It's a very well-oiled machine. And now you come in and say that, okay, we can actually do something far better right now. And that's a lot to ask. And that's sort of then the reason that, okay, what do you actually need to do that you can get this value out of this major change? And many companies are maybe even at the edge there, that they have done the pilots, they see that there's huge value available, but now they need to do this huge and heavy lifting to do everything that is not about technology, but everything else that are needed to get the benefits out of the technology.
Good answer.
Yeah, I don't really know what to answer, but it's a kind of it's a step-by-step approach that we need to have these pilots and strategies to go forward, and it takes time before there's something kind of visible business benefit. Although I think that for many companies there would be a negative business benefit if there's not any pilots and strategy to show that you are overlooking this area, then you are out of the game immediately. So that's a credibility issue also, that you look at this, and then probably companies are selective in looking at where it brings the best value. I don't know. Then it's normal business work.
Yeah. Markus, any thoughts on this?
Well, I don't have much to say here, but the one experience I've had is that sometimes AI has been sort of thought as a sort of like a replacement for existing, for example, industrial processes, which have been optimized for decades and decades. And then, of course, in that kind of setting, the AI probably cannot beat that kind of existing system. So the challenge is really to find like what new the AI can do, what new kinds of doors it could open.
Our time is up. Any concluding remarks that you want to make?
I can at least give the quick brief that we are still hiring. So there's a lot of need for AI people, and I think we've sort of been able to assemble a rather good community of really strong AI expertise. So really happy to hear new people interested in joining as well.
Yes, I sort of agree that the AI community in Finland is a very sort of it's maybe not that small anymore, but at least it's sort of very nice and collaborative, at least from my point of view. And I think this event also like shows that there's interest within like people to hear about these things, but also interest within like companies doing AI in Finland to then actually come and discuss about these things. But on my behalf, I thank the panelists